I just add to that, we really do need our independence, and we need it quick. We need a Scotland United approach. We need everyone in Scotland together, all our independence supporters, fighting on one cause and one battle, and that is independence for Scotland. I know people that are washing sinks in cold water, keeping an eye on their meters because they want to keep enough, so that they've got enough leckage for cooking the dinners later on. I mean, you've got people 2023 washing in cold water. I think it's just wrong. Our next speaker, I first spoke to him in a council estate in Dunfermline called Took. When he came to speak to the locals about all the issues that they were facing, I found out then that he was a fellow council lad, and it really showed that day. He understood the problems that went on there, and he really listened to the people that were there. Since then, we've shared a few rants about the injustice of it all. Our leader in Westminster, Neale Handy.
Okay, just speaking without the microphone, is that okay? Just avoid it if I can. So I wanted to just talk about why independence, why does it, what does it matter? Why are we here on a Tuesday evening when we could be at home watching whatever it is they have on the BBC these days? I have absolutely no idea. And the reason that I'm here is I've always had this interest, this passion to try and make people's lives better. From when I was a wee boy growing up in Glenrothes, these are the schemes in the streets that I grew up in, and my high school was just along the road. And the reason that we're here is because we know that things could be so much better. We know that what we're having to put up with is not what we should settle for. And we know that since the Tories got back in 2010, things have gotten considerably worse, not just in our own lives, but much worse for many of the most disadvantaged in our communities. So independence is not something that I'm passionate about because I'm a Scot, which I'm not, because I'm Scottish and I want independence. That's not what it's for me. Independence has to be about delivering something, and it has to be something better, something fresh, and something more honest than what we've had to put up with until now. So, reflecting back on my days growing up in Glenrothes, we had poor people, there definitely was poverty. But I've been in and out of houses all around here, all my younger days, and I have never seen the type of poverty that I see now when I go to speak to constituents in their homes or they come to see me. How can it possibly be that a woman in her 70s, who has worked all of her life, is coming to me to tell me how she's managing to ration her heating to 3 hours a day so that she can at least keep the walls warm for a period of time? That she sits in her house in a duffel coat and a scarf because she can't afford to heat her home? That she's rationing herself a couple of tins of tuna fish because she can't afford to feed herself? This is somebody who has a pension. This is somebody that should be enjoying the latter years of her life in some form of comfort and security. But that's not where we are. And another thing from those days that I remember that is as important to me as poverty, and that's equality. We can't have equality if the majority of the people that you're surrounded with are living in abject poverty. You can't have equality. And you can't have equality if the laws that were put in place to supposedly protect people no longer perform that function. I spoke in a Westminster Hall debate a few weeks ago about the precision of language that's used in the Equality Act regarding the protected characteristics specifically about sex and what it means to be a man or a woman. And that's important for a whole host of reasons. But it's important for this one fundamental reason, that if you can't describe anybody with precision, or you can't describe everybody with precision, you can't protect anybody, because you can't define who it is you're trying to protect within legislation. And I was reflecting before this event the macho culture that I grew up in as a young gay guy in Fife, you know, it was tough. It was tough. But in those days, everybody had a job, and it was either in metal in the shipyards or in the pits, or like me in the health service. People had a job. They had money in their pocket at the end of the week to go out to the pub and to chill out and relax. You know, there was poverty, but it wasn't the same kind of poverty that we have now, where life is unaffordable to people. Basic day-to-day life is completely unaffordable. But that macho culture, even then, there was domestic violence. And I remember a situation that happened, a friend of hers at work, and she was in a violent marriage. And my mum and the other women at work all got together and they planned. They got her a house from the council, they furnished it with donations from hither and thither. They managed to get that house set up, get that woman on a midnight flight out of that violent situation and give her a new start in life. How can that even possibly happen now? The council haven't got houses for people for years. The waiting list is so long. So those types of rescues are no longer available. And where we find ourselves, I find extraordinary. 2 weekends ago, a woman who was protecting her equality rights, her protected characteristic in the Equality Act, was assaulted in broad daylight in a premeditated and violent manner in Aberdeen, and the police have done nothing. They've done nothing. So today I wrote to a letter to the Deputy Chief Constable, which will be sent in shortly, asking how is this possible? How can it be that the police no longer care about violence perpetrated against women and girls in this country? Because even with all of the nudges and winks of the past, when men were violent against women, and they came in from the Sizwo and they were a bit hammered, and they got a bit handy with their wife or their children, some of the police might have turned a blind eye. But other people would never turn a blind eye. The community didn't turn a blind eye. There was always people like my mum ready to step up and help those people out of that terrible, corrosive relationship. So all of these things are illustrations of the impact of really poor social policy and inequality. They are the things that drive me. They are the reasons why I chose a career in the NHS, because I want to spend my time making other people's lives better. That is where I derive my satisfaction and my pleasure from working. I'm very glad that that's something that I get out of this job as an MP. So we have made some progress in the years since I was a young lad in Glenrothes, but not enough. And there are still far too many reasons why people are disadvantaged, and the poverty profile is significantly worse. There are areas in Fermanagh, Kirkcaldy, Glenrothes, and towns all across Scotland that are called have high index of multiple deprivation scores. What that means is that people there can't afford anything. They can't afford carpet on the floor, they can't afford food, they can't afford heating, they can't afford to put a fridge on, they can't afford to live. And that is completely unacceptable. And it would be unacceptable in any civilised country. But for that to happen in Scotland, with the vast natural wealth and resources that we have all around us, being siphoned off to the UK Treasury, with not a penny coming back to us, and what little does come back in the form of the block grant, is swallowed up by the basic running costs. And all of the benefits of this vast industry are now no longer available to the people by means of employment. And that's all siphoned off and offshore. And the real tragedy is that for all of the years and complaints about the loss of the revenue of Scotland's oil wealth down to the UK Treasury, last year the Scottish Government sold the ScotWind licence to corporate interests for a fraction of what it was worth. And this is the value at the time. It doesn't take into account all of the vast increases in energy since then. At that time, that 25-year licence was worth £350 billion. That was the value. It was sold for £700 million. And it was a ceiling on that 700 million. They could never have achieved anything more than that, and that was deliberate. The revenue costs that could come, that could be accrued by Scotland on the back of that licence sale, can only get to a maximum of £90 million a year. We should be getting at least £15 billion per annum on the back of that deal if it had been done properly. That is robbery. I don't care what anybody says. I know I get called out for using the word robbery in Parliament, but that is entirely what it is. And the reason it matters is all of those stories about poverty, all of those people you see on the streets homeless or drug-addled because they can't face the pain of everyday life. That is the price of that robbery. That is the consequence of that robbery. And that is why independence absolutely matters. So I went to Westminster in 2019 in very difficult circumstances, I have to say, but I was not prepared to take the opportunity for constituents in Gregorian County Meath not to have a candidate who was going to pursue independence to place their vote aside. And it worked. I was very fortunate and I'm very grateful to all of those people who helped make that happen. But I went to Westminster to do a very specific job. I didn't go to Westminster to get comfortable and cosy. I went there to get us out. That was the objective. That was the mission. And when I discovered that nobody, or very few people, shared that objective with me, who were sent by Scotland to Westminster to complete that mission, that was a pretty tough lesson. Because, you know, I tend to be rather forthright. I think that's an important quality in a politician. Some people find it abrasive. But I'm arguing not for myself. I'm arguing for a principle and to complete the mission of independence. So I will be forthright and I will call people out. But when I find out that members of that group of parliamentarians who were sent down to complete that mission are now sending letters to constituents who are asking them, quite rightly, to support initiatives that I've initiated in Westminster, whether it's the St Andrew's Day Declaration or more recently the Scotland Self-Determination Bill, and the response that they get back is that that's pointless. There's no point in doing those kind of things, they're just empty gestures. They mean nothing. When that's the response that SNP colleagues send to constituents and then say that the only way to achieve Scottish independence, the only way to achieve Scotland independence is to vote for the SNP so that they can save devolution. I mean, that doesn't even have any internal consistency as an argument, but it's a completely dishonest proposition, because at the moment, support for independence is around about 50%, if not a little bit higher. And I would say that's pretty good going, given that there's been no campaign for nearly 10 years. The support for the SNP, however, is now on the decline. And I know there's a lot of air punching, and very distasteful air punching tonight, because Margaret Ferrier has sadly succumbed to a campaign led by her former colleagues to kick her out of our seat in Rutherglen. But there's a very real possibility that the SNP won't win that seat. So what was it for? What exactly was that for? What was that effort for? The only way that we can secure that seat back into the hands of an independence-supporting MP is through a campaign based around independence with a very clear commitment on all of the issues that we've spoken about tonight and we'll keep speaking about in future. That independence is not an end in itself. It is there for the purpose of lifting the people of Scotland out of the penury and poverty that has been forced upon them for all of my life. And it has to stop. And that's it from me. So thanks very much.